The first writings of Dogen that most of us are likely to come across is a Genjikoan. And I came across it maybe 30-something years ago. And I found it very rich, very evocative, and very poetical. And there's a reason for that. Dogen wrote this for a lay follower, so it's different in style from his other writings, which were directed towards his monks predominantly. And in the Genjikoan, there's a particular passage which has always affected me very much, and it goes as follows, and this is in the Tanahashi translation. Firewood becomes ash, and it does not become firewood again. Yet do not suppose that the ash is after, and the firewood before. Understand that firewood abides in its condition as firewood, which fully includes before and after, while it is independent of before and after. Ash abides in its condition as ash, which fully includes before and after. Just as firewood does not become firewood again after it is ash, you do not return to birth after death. And the Nishijima translation is fairly similar, and that goes, firewood becomes ash. It can never go back to being firewood. Nevertheless, we should not take the view that ash is its future and firewood is its past. Remember, firewood abides in the place of firewood in the Dharma. It has a past and it has a future. Although it has a past and a future, the past and the future are cut off. Ash exists in the place of ash in the Dharma. It has a past and it has a future. The firewood, after becoming ash, does not again become firewood. Similarly, human beings, after death, do not live again. So, in trying to understand this passage, which I don't think I've been very successful in doing, the thing which seems most problematic is the third sentence. So the first sentence and the second sentence seem to be reasonably comprehensible. So Dogen seems to be saying that although in our karmic consciousness, firewood becomes ash, so one thing becomes something else, that's not actually true. So there's no underlying essence that at one point in time is firewood and then at another point in time is ash. So that those first two sentences, I think, are reasonably understandable. The third one, though, isn't. So in Tanahashi, that sentence goes, understand that firewood abides in its condition as firewood, which fully includes before and after, etc. And that word abides also occurs in the Nishijima translation. And for an English speaker, I think that word abides is unfortunate because, for me at least, it seems to suggest endurance. So somehow, although, as it were, the firewood has become ash, in some mystical sense, it still exists. It's still abiding somewhere. And one of the reasons why we make this interpretation, apart from the preceding sentences, is just the word abides and in some other translations it's remains, has this strong assumption of continuity. The word in Japanese, which is being translated as abides, means something like dwelling or lives within. And so we can see how the translators produced the English word abides. But I think a better translation might be to talk about the true home. So the true home of Firewood, what Firewood actually is the expression of Firewood. What the true essence of ash is the expression of ash. So there's not an underlying something which just happens to have a whole load of qualities on top of it, which we recognise as Firewood. The manifestation, the expression of Firewood is Firewood. So there's not a continuity of expression, but the reason why there's not a continuity of expression is because this miracle of the universe is not in the form that we imagine it to be. In other words, it's not in the form of discrete, albeit related, objects which persist and change through time. That rather it is an inconceivable expression of everything from moment to moment. And in that sense, it doesn't have meaning to talk about past and future, because that talking about past and future assumes an underlying continuity which in reality isn't actually there. But it's very deeply ingrained in us. So we say, well, 60 years ago I was a small child. In 10 years' time I'll be an old person. That sort of thing. So the language enables us to think that there's an underlying essence, even though there isn't. And I think if we make that analysis, then the other part of the sentence starts to make sense. Where it talks about in Tanahashi's version, Firewood fully includes before and after. Well, it is independent of before and after. So what I take by that is that from the perspective of the self, there is a me, there is an underlying me that is continuing and changing through time in a world of things which likewise are enduring and changing through time. But if we don't take the universe from this perspective of the self, then we can see that at every point the firewood, as it were, the ash, as it were, is connected to everything. And so at the point where the firewood is firewood, it is in a whole lived relational world of beings and things which are part of this fabric, this momentary fabric of firewood. And if that's too obscure, then consider your own life. So your own life is this whole series, we think, of moments that we're coming into contact with other people, things, and so on. And that contact is meaningful. That contact has expression and significance, which is invisible to us. So all these moments of our life are, as it were, having their own life, their own story in the greater reality of all beings.